What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Park Lane Podcast with myself, Luke, but also welcoming back Harry Scarf. Harry, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
Very good, thank you. I'm absolutely buzzing to be back. Just listening to the intro little anthem there. Brings back good memories. So it's nice to be back. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all, mate. And at some point we may have Dave, we may not have Dave. So let's just wait and see what happens. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about both of the games this week: the defeat to Chelsea midweek, and also today's victory against Southampton. We'll also be talking about next week's fixtures against Eintracht Frankfurt in the Europa League, and also the away trip to Wolves that we have coming up next Sunday. So lots and lots to talk about. Get your comments in the chat. Let us know who you are, where you are. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all the good stuff. Jay was in nice and early, actually. He said good evening today at 11:39 a.m. So good evening, Jay. He also said, welcome back to the podcast, Harry.
Thank you.
And make sure you go and check out Harry's channel. We've also got Holly Agambar in the chat. So she said, evening, geezers. Evening, Holly. And she said, driving back to Southampton now, shouting, you are going down. Nice. I like it. Right. So let's get cracking then, Harry. And let's talk about, to begin with, let's get the defeat out the way. And then we can talk about good stuff from there on in. Let's talk about the midweek defeat, 1-0 against Chelsea. Just go from like your thoughts in general, like of the game to start off with.
Yeah, I thought it was quite poor, Luke, if I'm honest with you. I mean, we go there, don't we, every year, not expecting anything at all, and often come away with nothing. So I don't think it's the result we should be surprised with or necessarily angry with. If that makes sense, because we should be used to that. But it's the way that we played. It's a London derby, and it's a case of where the players up for it again, which is a real shame, as well as it being another defeat. But the thing is, Chelsea weren't at their best. I think they were there for the taking. It's frustrating. So, but as bad as I think we were in that game and have been recently, we were, one small decision away in that VAR decision to getting a draw at Stamford Bridge, which is massive for us. I think we just don't do enough. We don't win there. We don't get anything there. So that would have been massive. And if I'm honest with you, I do side with Ange. I obviously vent my frustrations with him a little bit later, but I do side with him on this because for me, it's not clear and obvious. If it takes that long, and okay, Sarr doesn't get the ball, he does get the man, but there's not a lot of contact in it. For me, for a London derby, I just want to see that go. If football's a contact sport, I think they forget that sometimes. It's not what it was brought in for VAR. So I will associate myself with Ange in his position on that. But no, I did think we were good in this game, Luke. I think it was a game between two sides that are lacking confidence at the moment. Both, team season is petering out. So, yeah, it's frustrating. Obviously, there was a lot of outrage after this game, not really because of the performance or the result, but more of Ange's actions after, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it's one of those. It's frustrating. It happens every year. But it's just another London derby defeat. That's the only thing under Ange that I will say. It's been sad to see and quite frustrating. We have lost quite a few London derbies, and obviously those matter that little bit more to a lot of fans.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, one of the issues that we have. And I don't know the fix for it because it's not just been Ange. It's been probably the last 4 or 5 managers, bar, Mauricio Pochettino at times. There are also times when we weren't up for games as well. But, to see such a lackluster performance, I probably think in terms of effort, that's probably one of the worst performances I've seen, at least this season, probably for the last 3 or 4 years. I thought it was actually probably as bad as when we went out of the Champions League against AC Milan. I think, under Antonio Conte, where we needed something. And
it's just a nothing, isn't it? A nothing performance. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was dreadful on Thursday night, and I think it was Thursday. Thursday night, and I just don't know what to do because, I still think that Ange Postecoglou, whether it's him as like an entity is the right thing for Spurs, or whether this like whole rebuild is the right thing. I just don't think changing managers. I spoke about it last week. I just don't think changing managers does anything currently. But when you see things like that, you wonder like, how did we manage to get up for a game in the last leg against AZ Alkmaar in the Europa League, and really saw that performance from our side, to then showing signs of, just nothingness in that Premier League game against Chelsea. You're right about that Star incident. I felt like, you watch football, you're a bit young, but I mean, from like kind of early 2000s and late 90s, and that's just how football was played. Now it's just getting so soft, and it just feels like even today, like, and we'll get onto it in a bit, but like Christian Romero is offside by probably like 2 or 3 centimeters. Do you know what I mean? And it's a difference between his shoulder or his back being arched and the guy's foot, and I just think, why are we trying to pinpoint every single issue in every single goal? It's like the referees don't have anything else better to do. So we're like, oh, how can we like make it a bit more interesting for them? Like, just ref the game. The ref didn't think it was a foul at the time. If it clearly wasn't that like obvious, it wouldn't have taken so long and so many replays for them to do it. And as you say, it's as simple as, was it a clear and obvious error? If it takes 4 minutes, 5 minutes, then it's not a clear and obvious error. A clear and obvious error is done within a minute, 1 minute. And there should be I don't know, make it fun. There should be a timer. VAR have a minute to decide, yes or no, then move on. But yeah, it was weird as well, Harry, because that was probably our strongest lineup, I would say, that we could have played. And why do you think Spurs lack such mentality in these types of games?
I don't know, and I will criticise Ange at times tonight because I think it's been a difficult season. I don't think it's all on him at all. I think there's some things that he should be held accountable for. But how many times? I mean, when I was on the podcast previously, even under different managers, have we talked about a mentality issue at Tottenham? It's been ever ongoing. Even you could argue under Pochettino, you get to those big games at Champions League final, and it's just non-existent. Yes, we put a lot into that season, but a lot of it is mentality. It's a real shame, and I think it's a wider issue than Spurs and Ange Postecoglou. I'll give an example. Manchester derby today. I just feel like slowly but surely derbies are just going. They're just becoming like a normal game, and that is all because of, I think, the officiating. Because when you set this standard, Luke, that that there's can't be any mistakes and basically can't be any contact. We saw that at Stamford Bridge. But basically saying that football's a non-contact sport. At the moment, it is a contact sport. So when you make that drastic change, that just ruins everything with a derby. Then you get Palace and Brighton, right? And then you get 3 red cards. That's because the game's changing. And I don't think that's right. I think there should be more leniency in London derbies because it's what we want to see. It brings in the revenue. It's what fans want to see. I'm not saying that you should put an opponent at risk, but you look at those Palace and Brighton games, there's nothing that I go, oh my God, that's disgusting, send him off straight away. Just because they've got yellow cards, a referee's just been lazy. And when you send one off, you have to send the other. But in terms of mentality, Luke, we just, I don't know why, but it's just an issue. And I think the club is, for me, broken from top to bottom. I just touched it before. His words were the foundations are broken, and they are. Conte said it. Everyone's kind of said it at Tottenham, in terms of manager-wise anyway, that it is broken. And when you have something broken, very similar, I think, to Man United, is you get like almost like a disease or a kind of, I don't know, bad kind of scent, I suppose, running through the club, but you just can't shift it. And mentality, you got the word Spursy, you just can't shift it, and unless you, for me, change things at the club. So I can't really pinpoint it on one reason, sadly, but it is an ongoing issue, is all that I know. And again, it's these big games that we don't turn up in. We did, I think, at times under Conte. I think it was more about the manager that he maybe was, but at the same time, with him, we let slip a load of easier games. So that's as bad. And that's the thing, talking about easy games, Pochettino, how many times do we go and beat a team we weren't expected to, but then really slip up at home when we, as fans in our head, we're like, boom, 3 points. So there is a mentality issue at Tottenham, for sure. I just don't know why and how you stop that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one victory in the Premier League era at Stamford Bridge, and that was under Mauricio Pochettino.
It's crazy.
That's outrageous. And that's not a mentality issue under Ange. That's not a mentality issue, under any of these previous managers. Like, as you say, there is something seriously wrong at this football club. Now, I'm not somebody to bash the owners, right? I think a lot of what they have done at this football club has been absolutely outstanding. But, there gets a point whereby if And people have said it before, and I'm slowly starting to believe it, that if they believe that, getting in the top four is an achievement, that is then slips down and down and down and down throughout the squad. And then that becomes the bar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
If
lazy.
the achievement is winning, then that's that should be echoed throughout the thing. But if a top four place is kind of the achievement and looking good, then that's where the issues come in. And it's weird because for a long time I've been the kind of person that said, look at where we've come from under ENIC and look at where we're at now, right? We shouldn't try and strive and go to like places where we just shouldn't be expecting, right? So, from a kind of mid-table 10th, 8th position to, under Mauricio Pochettino, many, many years and, cementing ourselves in the top four of the Premier League, that is a good thing. And they have done a lot of good. But if they're not willing to take us to the next level, it's not just about financially, it's about mentality. If Daniel Levy's not sitting there going, why aren't we winning anything this year? What do we need to do to be able to get that? Then that's going to drip feed all the way through. Like I saw Pedro Porro at the end of that game where we lost 1-0 and we're sitting 15th in the Premier League, laughing and joking with the Chelsea players. Like that's not a derby mentality. That's just, speaking to your mates after a match. And it doesn't, I'm not digging necessarily at Porro, but that was just a particular incident that I thought, after all that's happened, the fans are absolutely raging. And that's the first thing that comes to your brain. The other thing that annoys me is when players chat to each other from opposite sides in the tunnel before the game.
Oh, I hate it, yeah.
And I just think, you don't have to dislike each other, right? But let's use boxing as an example, right? Even if the boxers don't dislike each other, they put it on for a bit of show for the cameras, before the fight, because that's the mentality you need to be in. When players are sitting there hugging, shaking each other's hands, laughing and joking before the game, it's just not right. And it doesn't just happen at Spurs; it happens in a lot of clubs. And as you say, Manchester derby today was pretty woeful as well. And are derbies losing their edge? I don't know. But something needs to change at Spurs, and unfortunately, we've done everything else, right? We've changed all of the players. We've changed all of the managers. We've changed the backroom staff. The only things that haven't changed are the owners.
Yeah, spot on. I haven't got that much to add to that, apart from I think at the moment, at this moment in time, I think that a complete overhaul would be great. It's never going to happen. But for me, and listen, I'll touch it briefly here. You say about the owners, about Levy. What I would agree is off the pitch, that they've done a lot. And for me, the number one priority is being financially stable, making sure the club doesn't sink, doesn't go under. And that's one thing that we have guaranteed under ENIC and under Daniel Levy for sure. But it's for me, we want to, we've sold this dream of the new stadium, and it could be a difference maker, a game changer, to be exact words. But basically, you see that Levy statement. What it's saying basically is we're not going to spend like the other clubs. But that's what I think the new stadium for me was about anyway. So it's disappointing to see. And you can't compete with the big clubs if you don't sign world-class players, or you don't at least compete. You hear all these players. I'll give you an example, random one. Pedro Neto for Chelsea. We're never going to be in that, whether it be for wage or whatever it may be down to. And we signed some really good young players. There's no escaping that. Bergvall, prime example. We steal him off Barcelona. That's great. Should be encouraged. We need to see more of that. Fantastic. But I feel like, Luke, that we neglect the current, neglect the experience. And I think in the summer we made a mistake. We shifted all the experienced players, which I know a lot of fans called for. I think it was wrong. And we bring in younger players, but we just don't seem to get that balance right. We're not ambitious enough. And that money's been spent. But you've got to look at where it's been spent. For me, that's the problem. And we just don't have, for me, world-class players. And you can't compete with, look at Arsenal, the gap this year. And of course, we should be doing a lot better than where we are 14th, I think, at this current moment, 16th before the weekend of balls kicked. But, there shouldn't be that gap between Arsenal, but there is because of the difference in players. I think they've got a lot better quality players. It would be Odegaard, Saka. I think they've got more quality and they recruit better and they're more ambitious. So we do need to see managers be given more time. That's why up until now I've given Ange a lot of time. I just think that there's some things that he's done maybe recently. Again, I'm sure we'll get on to the fifth question where I do stand on him. But we need to start giving managers more time because they aren't the problem at Tottenham. And where you are right, Luke, we remove Ange from the situation. We're not going to find ourselves in the top four like that And having been at the stadium in the game today between Tottenham and Southampton, really boring game, right? By which you get into both teams really poor. I think we're just a lot worse than people think. I think all our players back, Ange in, Ange out, whatever it may be, whatever happens, I just don't think we're drastically going to improve. I think we're at a mid-table position right now. I think that's how we've acted in the transfer market.
Yeah, it's you go and sell your best player, and unfortunately, you don't go and buy him, and it's definitely not for me an issue with Levy and the board spending money, because they are spending a lot of money, but they're just not spending it wisely, and that's a real problem at Spurs, and I don't know how that changes, because we thought that they were going to go to this data-led approach, which they may have done. We thought that Johan Lang was going to come in and do something, Scott Munn and other people, but it doesn't seem to have done much recently. But then, we can talk all day about Ange Postecoglou and what we should do next, because, if we are trying to back a manager, then we need to back a manager long-term and not short-term is my issue. Let's go to some quick comments. So Wes's mum is in the house saying evening also, evening to you. And David Clark says, how can Spurs fans not see that Ange just isn't up for it? How many times do Spurs come out in the second half when leading and perform like the game's already won?
We've been saying it for years, though. I will defend Ange on that.
Back.
It's not an Ange issue.
Yeah, there's an interesting point to that one, and I will kind of bring it up quickly now before we talk about Ange. That if we're talking about today's game, I also was sat on the sofa saying we should be attacking, we should be scoring more, but we run out very easy 3-1 winners. We rotate a hell of a lot of players in the second half. We rest, Son Heung-min for at least half an hour, 40 minutes, and we still end up winning the game 3-1. Yes, okay, at one point at 2-1, it does look a bit, dodgy. And there is an element where, like a Liverpool or something like that, would probably keep going and keep their foot down, especially under Jurgen Klopp. They would.
We're not that good.
But at the same time, the idea is to win football games, right? And so there's a very interesting balance between like how you do that. And today we still won 3-1. So, I mean, I'm not too upset about that. But let's talk about Ange quickly, because at that Chelsea game, he seemed to have, cupped his ear to the fans, let's say, who jeered his substitutions of taking off Bergvall, I believe, for Pape Sarr. Pape Sarr then scores, obviously disallowed, but at the point at which he's scoring, he then does something like this to the Spurs fans. Now, lots been said on social media. He's come out and said his piece on it. I just want to kind of talk to you about your thoughts on Ange Postecoglou in general, and also your thoughts of that incident on Thursday.
Yeah, listen, I think that I've recognised recently that, and for a while now, that the manager isn't the problem at Tottenham, and you need to be backing, but it's whether you're backing the right horse or not is the question here. For me, that really, I'm disappointed by his actions against Chelsea, because let's be honest with you, he doesn't have that many fans still behind him long term. All of us probably agree that to stick with him, like for the Frankfurt game, for example, for the rest of the season, is probably the right thing to do. But in terms of giving him that another season, that third season, not many fans, I think, if you surveyed across the whole fan base, would vote to have him for another season if they could choose. And it doesn't work like that in football. But he's just, for me, slowly but surely every week losing those few that are left by little things he's doing, and he just can't help himself but lash out. From as far as I'm concerned, where we are in the table, to be cupping your ear, hands to your ear, to your own supporters when you are having the season you're having, it I find a little bit embarrassing. But at the same time, as a manager, when you take that level of abuse, I understand it. And some of the scenes we saw at Stamford Bridge, the swearing and cursing, in particular the younger players, has to be condemned. It's not what we want to see. But there also is another balance you've got to strike, where fans should be expecting and have a right to a standard this year. When you're paying the prices that we do, it's a choice, but you should be expected better, because this season domestically has been shambolic. There's no situation where, like, we come into the weekend, we should be 16th place. We don't. Nobody wants to see that in the club. We shouldn't be there with or without injury. So we have to be doing better. I think we are underperforming, but I think Ange, it has been a breath of fresh air. He speaks so much sense. That's the thing, and I found him maybe a little bit clumsy. Doesn't help himself. Like Fulham reacts with that fan, which is frustrating. But one thing I will say, Luke, is I feel like, and I want to get your thoughts on it, but I feel like in recent weeks, and I don't know why, but I feel like we've lost our identity under Ange. A lot of, I was saying to fans, just like, yeah, but we still have this way of playing. We score these goals, these fantastic team goals. And we did recently, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you go, look, that's Ange ball when it works, you get all our players back. But they're now all back. And I know not 100% fit, match fit if you like. But I just look at us against Southampton. There's nothing that much really about us, like Chelsea's nothing about us. And I just worry, I thought we'd be better with all our players back. So at this moment in time, I do think that we probably move on from him in the summer. I just don't think maybe he's right for the Premier League. Nothing against him. I wish him all the best, but I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love it to work. But where I don't understand, Luke, and I hope you share this with me, is that if we win Europa League, for me, you absolutely, without a doubt, stick with him and give him another season. We haven't won a trophy since 2008, but fans generally think, could get rid of him and would get rid of him before that game. And I don't. I mean, I posted on my social media before asking the question based on how I felt off the Chelsea game. If I'm being honest, I don't think it's the right thing to do. But it's something that is slowly but surely being entertained. So for me, you just wait till the end of the season. We know what this season's been for a variety of different reasons, but there's no secret. If he can still be a special season, and if we win the Europa League, he should be in charge next season without a doubt.
Yeah, there should, in my opinion, if he wins the Europa League, there should be a lot of apologies because, the amount of abuse that this man has had from the beginning of when we even tried to sign him as a manager. People wanted him out before he even came in. There's often made about his nationality, where he's managed before. You can't do it in the Premier League, and so on. And look, this season has not been good, and I don't, I don't think that anybody can make any excuses for that. Like, I was somebody who really wanted Ange Postecoglou in. Now, do I think it's going to work? I don't know. I'll tell you what I think, right? My fear is that the same thing that happened to Nuno Espirito Santo could happen to Ange Postecoglou. He leaves Spurs, he gets sacked by Spurs, guaranteed he gets a lower level Premier League job after Spurs, guaranteed. Whether that's like a Wolves or or someone like that kind of level in the Premier League, or worst case, he gets a top level Championship job. Worst case, and then bring somebody up. My fear is that it's not him, it's us, a little bit like with Nuno. But my other issue is, and I spoke about this last week, was that if we sack Ange and we go and get Marco Silva, or we go and get Thomas Frank, or we go and get Iraola, all that happens is that we start this cycle all over again. All of those managers are rebuild type managers. They need time. They're not bring them in and change your fortunes immediately. So by sacking Ange 2 seasons into a rebuild, all you're doing is resetting the clock back again 2 years. You're wasting all of that time and all of that money. I don't think our fans have got the patience to deal with another rebuild type manager, which is what we require. My theory about what happens, and I've got 2 of them now. One of them's a bit of a funny one because I've been thinking about it this week, and it's if Ange, as people will say, by a miracle, let's say he wins the Europa League, right? It would not surprise me if Daniel Levy sacks him anyway, because that's the type of thing Daniel Levy would do. Everyone would be so happy we got a trophy, and then you just get rid of him anyway. A bit like sacking Jose Mourinho before a cup final, because that's the type of thing he'd do. But my other actual real theory is that we do try and hold on to him for one more season, and at the end of that season, it's the World Cup in 2026, and at which point they probably will more than likely be able to get Mauricio Pochettino from the US squad, and that's when he comes in. If we bring in a brand new manager at the end of the season, at the point in which the World Cup ends, which his main duty is, obviously he could stay as the US boss for as long as he wants, but his main duty is to take them through that World Cup. It would be very difficult to then get him at that point. And I think all of this talk that he's been doing about coming back to Spurs, all of these, like I've seen even the Bloomberg interview with Daniel Levy, which happened quite a while ago, where he talked about Pochettino, and how good friends they are. All these pictures have started reappearing. There's just something that tells me that they try and hold on to Ange for another season, and then they go all out and get Mauricio Pochettino at the end of that 3rd season. Now, if we were to go out on Thursday night and we finish 14th in the Premier League, I don't think Daniel Levy has any other option than to sack the manager. Personally, I don't think it's the right thing to do because I think that we'd just be setting the clock back. Personally.
No, I totally agree. And I didn't really think about that with Pochettino. You're totally right. And there's a question there, I think for me about Pochettino and would he come back? And it's kind of answer that and talk about what you said. I'd like it to happen, but I can't see it happening because that means Daniel Levy going back, which he said in his own words, you never go back in football. And I just don't see him as someone who admits mistakes. But Levy, in terms of how Joe Lewis or Enoch with you was doing a perfect job, in terms of the money that he's bringing in with a new stadium and just striking that balance, do really well with the business. But for us, it's super, super frustrating because we want to see a football club. So I think that's a wider football issue in terms of the direction we're going. But I totally, understand your points with Ange Postecoglou. For me at the moment, you don't give him that third season. I'm all for backing a manager, but I don't think he's quite right. And the only thing I will disagree with that you said, Luke, is I actually think he goes elsewhere rather than the Premier League. I think he goes. I don't know where he goes necessarily, but I think might go to somewhere to Holland or to Spain. I don't see it in the Premier League. I think you get players. I think Brian Gill might be one. It doesn't make him a bad player, or in this case, a bad manager. But some just aren't right for certain leagues or aren't right for certain clubs. I just don't think that Ange Postecoglou's style. Well, I think it could do, but I don't think it works at Spurs. I don't think we give him what he needs. He needs the best player in every position. We're not going to give that. That's why I questioned the appointment in the first place. Do you do that if you're going to back a manager? How many times have I said this? Conte, Mourinho, what's the point in these managers, whether it be project managers or win now managers, if you're not going to back them? I don't understand it. But whatever happens, I think we need to get behind. And if Ange is here, there shouldn't be any hostility towards him. We should fully get behind him. But what we've got to do as fans, especially the ones that are going, fully get behind the team Thursday. We know we've been awful. I'm angry with Ange. I'm angry with the team. I'm angry with everyone at the moment because we've been bad. But we've got to get behind the club on Thursday and do everything we can in our power to be that top man and win the game. We know that, Luke, that some fans will turn up there, be really miserable. Some people won't go. Will be difficult. We don't want any of that. You've got to get behind the team. Today was a really, really strange atmosphere. It's not what you want or expect when you win a game either.
No, exactly. And that's the issue, isn't it? It's sometimes it feels that some of our fans are happier when we lose because then it fits the agenda that they want to spout. And it doesn't make any sense to me. If Ange wins something, great, I'll be happy. But if he also gets sacked, if it's the right thing for us to do, then that's the right thing to do. But I just want to touch kind of very quickly because David Clark said, I'll criticise Ange for his tactics and substitutions, but sorry, whether he's under pressure because of his own inability to make Spurs better, I have no problem with Ange cupping his hands at people swearing. And there was a really interesting thing in the press conference, I think, that Ange said, and it was about mobile phones. And, he talked about how, mobile phones are super dangerous because, people feel like they can do whatever they want when they've got this phone out and they're recording. True. And you see a lot on the internet, and these are the times when I start to feel old as a person because, you start to have these thoughts and when you see people online, especially, it's always the ones that are filming. I mean, obviously, because you see it online, but that, feel like they can do whatever they want. And it's the same, with what happened, against Fulham at the end of that game. Of course, Ange reacts because we don't see what happens before he reacts, right? We don't see what they're saying and how they're goading him, before that. It just so happens that they've got a phone in their hand and they're shoving it and they're shoving it and they're shoving it. And eventually, people are gonna break. Do you know what I mean? Today I was driving in the car, right? Someone beeped at me. And then, I beeped back and was like, a few different words this, but why the hell are you beeping at me? And then, if someone's there, but at the same time, filming me, it's going to be all over the internet. Do you know what I mean? And so people are going to talk about it. But lots of things happen and people don't see it. I think it was really strange idea for these so-called journalists because they were the first ones, or one in particular, I can't actually remember who it was, but they were the first ones to pick it up and there was no videos on it until Sky Sports just zoomed in to see it happen. And no one would have noticed it happened apart from that. And that's my issue is with the growth of media and journalism and social media and other things like that, people are trying to find a way to get that clickable thing, try and get that viral content. And sometimes it comes at the other person's expense. And when that happens, it's not right. And so what he did, cupping ear to the fans, it's not really the right thing to do. But at the same time, this guy has been, hounded by our fans from the day that he got this job at this football club. And, it wouldn't surprise me if he did a Jose Mourinho down the touchline if we won the Europa League, and I'd say go for it.
And he deserved that, yeah.
Anyway,
No, I think
that's
it's spot on.
my rant on that.
No, I totally agree with you. I think he speaks in really good sense, I think, after. And that's the thing, even with those interviews, you just see the bit like, it'll come up on my feed, the bit clicked where he's like, you put me in a corner, mate. And I was like, oh, here we go again. What's he doing? Attacking another interviewer. But if you watch the interview, he talks about mobile phones, spot on. It might not be exactly in that interview, but also this is on the night as well. But with him, he talked about, with Sky, this was Sky interviewer, talks about VAR. Spot on. Speaks some really good points. And he doesn't seem to handle generally those post-match interviews very well, but he does speak a lot of sense. And I really want it to work out, Luke, to be honest with you. Just that he's such a likable guy, isn't he? Let's be honest with you here. And he plays the right football. And I'd love nothing more than to be proved wrong. So I'm going to sit here and tell you that I don't think it's going to work. Because I just feel like we've lost our identity. I don't think it's necessarily lost a dressing room, but I think we're losing our way, losing our spark, if you like. But I'd love us to win the Europa League and for it to work. But we know, Luke, like you do, there's some people that just won't want it to work, won't want us to win the Europa League so we can go. And I just can't quite get my head around that. I'll hold my hands up, right? And you know this. I was sceptical when we brought him in. But if you remember, I called out that was a hashtag, wasn't there? Like, no to Ange, because that's pure entitlement. He's not who I would have chosen. Even going back now, if I'm honest with you, I don't think it was right in terms of what Ange needs to succeed at Tottenham. We're never going to give him that. So I think it was, in hindsight, probably the wrong appointment. But when he's here, you've got to back him. So it's like today, I'm not going to go and make it difficult for the players, because a load of people in and around me shout abuse at the players, some in particular, all game. And including the manager, I just can't get my head around doing that. You've got to back the team. Yes, we've been bad, but I love my club at the end of the day, and this could still be a special season. But Luke, wouldn't it be so Spursy, right? And I hate using that word, but I think we can use it in this kind of context. Wouldn't it be so Spursy to finally win a trophy, but when we've been awful, like we finished at 14th, 15th, even 16th in the league, but we're in the Europa League. That'd just be so Spurs to do. I couldn't care less. I don't know about you, but winning that trophy. Closer to building Ange's statue rather than getting rid of him.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Like that would be typical Spurs, to play probably the worst season that they've had in, I don't know, 10, 15 years and still win something. But quickly before we move on, Meta Football TV said at least a third season should be given to Ange. This year is an anomaly, and we haven't had the necessary continuity. So, yeah, look. Who knows really what the right thing to do is? I have this feeling about Daniel Levy and Spurs that they are trying to hang on to him because they would like that, they would like to try and settle the ship for a little bit. But if it doesn't work with Ange Postecoglou, that's the reason why I think he goes back to Mauricio Pochettino, because I just think that he had nothing else. There's nothing else. Like we'll try and touch on change for Tottenham later, but we've spent way too long talking about this. But it is growing. It is growing and it's growing. It's like a zombie apocalypse, right? It starts with one or two, and then it starts to get into more and more and more and more and more people. And fair play to everybody at Change for Tottenham, because today, outstanding amount of people there for the protest. But it's growing on Daniel Levy, and it's like being in the palace, right, in the zombie apocalypse, and it's happening, and you're trying to hide out for as long as possible. But at some point, they're going to bash the gates down, and then that's the point in which you need an atomic bomb or something to be able to try and fix it. But
Levy will say he's listened to fans. To play devil's advocate, he'll say he's listened. He'll say that, look, I've given a manager time here, but the other argument, playing devil's advocate, will be, is he backing the right guy or not? And is he fully backing him? That's the thing. Then, just quickly, very, very quickly as well, touch on Meta's comment there. And that's, third season is all good in hindsight, but what stops us from being in this position again next season if the right players aren't signed? What if we have another injury crisis because we didn't prepare for it this season? Because none of us want to see us be this time next year be 15th, 16th. We should be in and around that top four, if not the top six. That's where we want to be, fighting for European places at the very least. So I just can't see that changing. And I don't think it's all on Ange. It's just, Levy the way he does things as well. But you shouldn't see through another manager at the same time, should he? We keep saying this is, his last chance, Enoch's last chance. When do you say, look, enough is enough?
Yeah, exactly. Look, the last thing I will say, and I will die on this hill, I don't believe that even Arne Slot would make any difference to this Spurs club, this Spurs team, in the season that, Ange has had in terms of injuries, in terms of, the ownership that we have. I don't believe he would have made any difference compared to what we've had currently under Ange Postecoglou. But let's move on and talk about the Southampton game today. So we did run out 3-1 winners. It's not all doom and gloom. We did get another victory. And actually, Manchester United did not beat Manchester City. So actually, we've now climbed up within a point of them. We're now up to 14th in the Premier League. I know, 14th. But it's not as bad as the 16th that we were before kickoff. Look, today wasn't it, right? Look, first half, I thought we played well. I thought the football we played was nice. I thought that everybody seemed to push up a lot higher up the pitch. Second half, we definitely did drop off for sure. Whether that's to do with trying to reserve energy, whether that's to do with the fact that we had lots of substitutions, I don't know. My issue with that is when you are playing so badly in a season and you have a game where you start to play well, it's probably better for you to continue to play well because it's going to be more ingrained in you. At the moment, the losing side, the lackluster side is ingrained in us. And so I feel like if we'd carried it on for 90 minutes, could have put us in a good step for Thursday night. But it was really good to see Brennan Johnson score twice today. My only worry is why on earth Matthias Tell doesn't give that penalty to Brennan Johnson. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Harry.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see because Johnson was on a hat trick. But at the end of the day, it's one of those, it went in just. I think maybe because the goalkeeper was in goal. But I'm hoping it gives Tell confidence. He's a player that I was surprised not to see on the team sheet. I think maybe Ange could use a little bit more. Obviously, he'll know more about his state of fitness and general ability, I suppose, in training. But I was surprised not to see him start. Yeah, I am. And if I'm honest with you, I'd left the stadium but only just, but by this point. So obviously a lot did happen with those couple of goals. And it's just strange because Johnson's on a hat trick and is a player that's been for a lot, as we know, this season, especially early in the season. You want to see him getting that hat trick, but suppose Tell's a natural striker. It would have done him good. So I'm not too annoyed about that, but surprised if I was Ange, I would have, or Tell even, as you say, would have given it to Johnson. But that's the way it is, and it was a cherry on top in the end. Southampton could have made it interesting come the end, but they couldn't. And I mean, just Southampton touching them. I mean, just relegated early April, 22 points adrift. It's just staggering everywhere you look. And their fans are funny though. Their way support, singing to us, go down with Southampton, and just a load of chants they were singing. How bad must you be? If, you only win 1-0, 2-0, and talk about them in the Championship next year, taunting their own team. It gets that desperate. But no, it was interesting to see. I fully expected Johnson to take it. I didn't even think, who would take it? There's no Kane. There's obviously no Kane now, but no Son on the pitch, no Solanke. I just thought, Brennan will take it. So I was very surprised to hear.
He won the penalty as well.
Yeah. It's weird. I was surprised to hear on the radio that it was they didn't say he was going to step up. They just said Tell converts from the spot. I was like, because usually I don't have to worry because I'm there, but obviously I had to get back for Callum's podcast, make sure I was home, which I just about was in time. So the radio didn't report it at all very well. I was like, oh yes, get it, Brennan. He's got a hat trick. Then they said that start talking, and I was thinking, hang on, they're talking about Matthias Tell here. So it's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I when I was watching it on TV, I couldn't, because Ange seemed to shake his head, and I didn't know whether that was like that he wanted Brennan to take it. That's the only issue I'll say about Ange is he kind of lets them just decide amongst, as far as I'm aware, what's going to happen.
He doesn't get involved enough for me.
He doesn't. Yeah, he did speak about it after the game, and Brennan Johnson, he did say look, I'm not going to make an argument about it, and I'm not going to put off the person who is going to take it. The decision was made, and that's it. I don't know if Tell seems like one of those people, and those that watch me regularly on here know that I've got a bit of an issue with Matthias Tell. And I don't usually have issues with people, right? But I do have a bit of an issue with him, only because of the way that he acted before we signed him on loan. And then he's come in and he really hasn't like shown enough of himself for me, to warrant him starting. Hence why he didn't come on until about 80 minutes. He has that kind of like attitude about him of a like top quality player, but he just doesn't seem to be backing it up at the moment. And so for me, that's why it annoys me, because that's probably why he took the penalty and he was like, "Nah, this is mine. I'm taking it." Like, but I don't know if that was a decision by Ange, or if that was just his decision. But look, Brennan Johnson has had a brilliant season. He's been injured, and he's still got, I think, 11 Premier League goals. I think 16 goals in total, as far as I can remember, if I remember the stats. And yet people like absolutely slate him. I'd have been over the moon for him to get a hat-trick today. But look, it wasn't meant to be. As you say, it doesn't really matter who scores, as long as somebody scores. It just would have been nice for Brennan Johnson to get a hat-trick.
Yeah, it would have been, but it is what it is. At least we scored. It would have been interesting if Tell didn't score there, but Ange's got to be ruthless, isn't he, in those situations, especially if you want to win like the Europa League. He's just got to make his decision. I'd just like to see him get involved a little bit more, just like we had that stoppage like with Ramsdale's injury, different bits, VAR checks and that. You've got Southampton manager barking instructions. Of course, you don't want it too much. You don't want to be like a micromanager like Conte, but I'd like a little bit more maybe input from him. But at the end of the time, he's been around in management for a long time. He has a lot more than I do, and he's won things that way. But I just sometimes think the players, maybe just our players, who talk about like mentality issues and that, I think just needed a boost every now and then. Need those instructions.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's when you get into that point whereby players are like discussing, let's say, who's going to take the penalty. We've seen it before with Richarlison and other people like that. At some point the manager has to say, this is what's happening, give the ball to Brennan or whatever. But maybe he doesn't care, and maybe he thinks it's part of it. They have to sort this out between themselves. I don't know, but David Clark said Johnson has so many tap-ins, he should be a plumber. But
who cares though? He's scoring. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I think you've got to get in the right position, haven't you, to be able to score that?
I don't get the hate. I don't get the hate.
Let's use Chicharito or Javier Hernandez as a good, good example for Manchester United. He was the biggest tap-in merchant I've ever seen. If he was ever 6 yards out or further from scoring a goal, I'd have been surprised, because he only ever scored within the 6-yard box, but he scored loads of goals. And I think it's just about, as a striker or as a forward player, you've got to be in the right positions. And let's use Timo Werner. He played on the opposite side, or plays on the opposite side. He would never be able to get into those positions to score those goals. It's just a difference in mindset and ability. But can't take it away from Brennan Johnson. I think he's had a great season. Look, I'd love to sit there and talk about Southampton all day long, because we've played Southampton twice this season. I actually tweeted this after the game, and in the first game they sacked their manager afterwards. In the second game they got relegated. So not an ideal season to play Spurs. Out of all the doom and gloom we've had, at least we've had the double over Southampton. That's all I can say.
That's true. Clutching straws there.
Yeah. Right, let's move on and talk about Eintracht Frankfurt, because we are in, bizarrely, you wouldn't believe it, listen to some of our fans, but we are in a quarter-final of a European competition this week, and a very, very winnable quarter-final, in my opinion. There's talk about, okay, why were we X-seed and we were playing at home first, or whatever it is. For me, it's like, look at it like this. We play at home first, we get a chance to really set a statement in terms of this tie. We get a chance to say, okay, we're going to go 2-3-0 up, and we're going to take it to them and say, come and beat us in your own ground, rather than going away first, struggling, and then have to show up at home. In my opinion, it's
Okay.
that's the way I look at it, right? But different people have different opinions on it. I think that it's a winnable tie. It's a very favourable tie for Spurs. I think the whole draw is favourable for Spurs. I think, the next round, either Bodo Glimt or Lazio. I know we can't look that far, but again, I think that's a winnable tie against either of those sides, in my opinion. So, and it has to be about mentality. And you're right. When you talked about earlier fans, showing up and being supportive towards the side, I always talk about Liverpool whenever I talk about this. And I always talk about how they are at Anfield in these big games and these big nights, and how they're the 12th man. We need this at our football club. And unfortunately, right now, look, I can't speak for certain because I'm not at every game, right? But that's what I feel is missing. When you go and watch a team travel to Anfield, you see that it puts the fear up them, right? It's very similar to when we played away at Galatasaray. Similar atmosphere there. That's what we need to be able to have at this football club. Unfortunately, right now with our fans, it's so divided that we can't do that. And no wonder that reflects on sometimes our performances. But on Thursday night, we need to be up for this. And really, we should be setting a statement, in my opinion.
Yeah, we should be 100%. And you're right in terms of the draw. It has favoured us. I think that Frankfurt are a strong outfit, though. Third in the Bundesliga, third highest scoring. Having said that, though, they've I think lost 4 of their last 8, and in their last 6, they've won 3 of them and lost 3. So there's a bit of fragility exposed recently, but they're still really strong outfit. And I personally, before getting your thoughts, viewed it a bit differently. I viewed it in terms of we're going to have to do a lot in that first leg to take to Frankfurt to be able to go through. But I like the way you look at it, because how many times we had to do the job in that home second leg and failed to do it. So many times. Conte, AC Milan, we haven't got the job done, is a good example of that. But it's going to be tough, and I just worry about us away in Europe. I think realistically we have, I think we do have to go into that second leg, go to Frankfurt with a lead, ideally of a couple of goals at least. But I think it's going to be hard. But we've got to go into it positively. Forget about how we've been playing and just go, right, let's put our best team out, and let's absolutely go for it. Come up with a really clear game plan, which hopefully Ange will work on this week, which I think you've got to ditch your principles in games like this and just go, look, how can we hurt Frankfurt and how can we stop Frankfurt hurting us? And he's got to find a way of doing that, getting the most out of this group, which clearly even today I think it showed lacking confidence despite the win, and just find a way to get us over the line, because that second leg's going to be tough, but we can do it. We can definitely win it. Like you say, it is a winnable tie, but we've got to be at our best, and we haven't been really at all this season. That's the problem. Certainly not enough.
Definitely. Do you know where that comes from? So people that kind of don't know me, I used to be an estate agent for many, many, many years, right? And I was once in a training course, and this is so in the estate agency, like you have a lot of the time you hire multiple estate agents to come around and give you a valuation in your house, right? For those that are bored of this talk already, but there is a point to it. And most estate agents always say, "Oh, I want to be the last one to go, because then I can find out how much everybody else is charging. I can, then convince, the seller of the property to then go with my company." I went to a training course once, and the lady said, "I never want to be last. I always want to be first." And the reason is because I want to set the standard for everybody else, because I want to do such a good job, and I believe in my ability, that doesn't matter how much everybody else charges. The seller of that property is going to want to hire me, because I've already set such a high standard, they're not going to be able to compete. And that's the way I look at it with this tie. So rather than being like everybody says, "Oh, I want to be at home on the second leg because that's where you have the advantage," like I'm suggesting the opposite of that. We're at home first. Let's go and set a standard, and let's go and put it to a point whereby teams have to then go and do something in the second leg.
Yeah, I like that. This is a really good way of looking at it, really ambitious, really bold. So I appreciate your insight on that. That's really valuable. It makes you look at it in a different way.
No problem. David said, "I'll no longer go to the lane with Levy in charge, and will not buy merchandise, and I've decided to follow my local team in Colville Town because at least they are a club run right." Well, I tell you what, David, I would like to be kept up to date with Colville Town. So each week I'll need a report on how they got on, because I have a local team where I live and in Scotland, and this season they won the league, and they're in the top division of non-league, and then last weekend they won a cup. This weekend they won a cup, and everybody always abuses them because apparently, I don't know too much about them because I haven't been to many games, but I do follow them, kind of the results, and see how they get on. Everyone always lays into them because they've got really rich owners apparently, and but the issue is they won the league last year as well, but they never get promoted, because in Scotland to get promoted you have to you then, once you win the league, you then go into a playoff with the relegated team from the division above. So they're in the last division of non-league, and then they have to play whoever gets relegated to League Two in Scotland in a playoff. And last season they lost the playoff, and so it's just non-leagues are really interesting to watch. But it's harsh, harsh. Yeah, imagine winning the league 2 seasons in a row. This season we don't know; they might still get promoted, but it's hard, isn't it? Because you've got to beat the teams in the division above. It's like imagine winning the championship and then saying, but you didn't actually get promoted. You've now got to do a playoff against Southampton.
Well, you're knackered after putting so much into the season. So that's proper wrong, I think.
Here we go. They've just been promoted and are the highest village team in England. Oh, I love that.
Ooh.
I wonder what league. Tell me what league is that? Like, how far are we going down? Are we like step 10? Or are they not even in, that kind of pyramid? Oh, I'm all in for Colville Town.
Yeah, I'm interested as well.
Before Wes's mum goes, she said, either way, unfortunately, Ange has to go. It's just not working out. And then she said, have a good week, everyone. So have a good week as well. To Wes's mum. Right. Let's talk. Actually, do you know what, Harry? I'm going to ask for your prediction for Thursday night against Frankfurt. What do you think is going to happen?
I'm like you in terms of I don't like to predict us to lose. Go on then. We're going to win. I'm going to go 2-1 Spurs. It's just whether it's enough to take to Frankfurt, which we'll find out in the second leg. But I'm feeling confident. I'm just totally zoning out what's happened this season and just thinking about this game, which is massive, the biggest to date of the season, this football club. And I know the players we've got available, what these boys and what this team's capable of. We can do it. We've just got to believe in ourselves and we've got to be better than we have been. And if the fans are right, the atmosphere's right, we're up for the occasion, under the lights, at home, we can do this. We can start to make this stadium finally a fortress. And it starts on this game, starts Thursday, 2-1 Spurs for me.
Amazing. Love that. Do you know what? There's no point in me making a big point about playing at home first and setting a standard unless I'm going to set a standard.
Go on.
3-0 Spurs, I'm going for.
Oh,
I know.
Wow. That is a standard and a half.
And then still watch us struggle in Frankfurt.
Probably.
Yeah. Probably go 1-0 down after 5 minutes, squeaky bum time, but then the other 85. But talking about score predictions, actually, I forgot to talk about last week's score predictions. So we'll quickly go through that before we talk about the Wolves game next Sunday. So let's start with the Chelsea game. The last week's score predictions were as follows. I went for a 2-1 Spurs win. For Dave, Winnie, and Wes, they all had the dreaded random wheel of death. And so Winnie ended up with a 5-5 draw. Dave had 4-0 Chelsea. Wes had 5-3 Spurs. And Callum had 3-1 Spurs. Unfortunately, though, the only person who got any points was Dave, who got 1 point for predicting Chelsea to win. So he, we'll see the scores in a minute. And these are the scores for Southampton. I went for a 3-0 Spurs win. Unfortunately, it was 3-1, so I only get 1 point. Callum also went for the same score, so he also gets 1 point. And both Winnie, Dave, and Wes also all went for Saints victories. 3-2 for Winnie, 5-2 for Dave, and a 4-3 for Wes. So that means that only me, Callum, and Dave got 1 point this week. It actually means that Dave now sits on the lead on 17 points, Winnie on 16, Wes on 15, and me and Callum sit on 8. So we're struggling at the very, very bottom. Let's see if we can get a turnaround before the end of the season, or will Dave continue to reign at the top? And will he get the crown next to his name next season? Right, let's sit and talk about the Wolves game next week. So away against Wolves, they've been kind of one of those weird teams this season. We're under Gary O'Neill. They seem to be doing okay, but not amazing. Then they've got this new crazy manager in. They beat us. Well, they beat us a few times, I think, this season. But they're kind of in and around the relegation zone, but doing well enough against the relegated sides to not be too much affected by relegation. They still may be in it, but probably will end up avoiding it. They just seem like our bogey team at the moment, don't they? How do you feel about this game away at Molineux?
Yeah, not looking forward to it. I feel more confident about Frankfurt, which sounds totally weird to say, but it's just more about us being Spurs and Spursy, I suppose. Yeah, you're totally right. And Wolves, I think, pretty much are safe now after beating Ipswich. 12 points safe now with 7 to go. Before that, it was a little bit of question because Ipswich won last time. And Ipswich were winning that game, which would have brought the gap down to 6 points, but now stands at 12. That's how much of a big difference a couple of goals makes in football. Proper 6 points on that one. Which really hurt Ipswich and Kieran McKenna and really benefited Wolves. They've done really well under this new manager. They coped really well without Mateus Cunha. The goals seem to be distributed more evenly without him. It sounds weird that they've actually done better. I don't know why, maybe not having that attitude. Because Cunha, how many times this season he talked about wanting to leave Wolves? I mean, it just strikes bad attitude, good player, but yeah, wrong type of person you want to run a dressing room, wrong character, wrong individual. So this is going to be a tough game. Wolves will cause us problems. There's no doubt about that. But we need to be trying to win these games because that's the problem, Luke. At the moment, we're losing these games. So we've got to get to the stage where we're drawing these games, like the case of Chelsea today, away to Brentford. Because games that we can't win, we've got to make sure that we come away with something, and we're not doing that. That's the thing, and we're just too inconsistent at the moment. So we need to get back to winning these type of games, which are a little bit difficult, Sunday afternoon away to Wolves. It has potential on it to be difficult, banana skin like. We just got to find a way to overcome these games more often. So I'm not feeling too confident, if I'm honest, about this one, but a lot could change with obviously us playing before. You just don't know with Spurs. A lot changes every day at the moment. So it'd be nice to win, but it's all about the Europa League for me. Anything else in the league is just a little bit of a bonus.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really weird mentality to be in because, I'm thinking about how does Ange, get everybody so up for a game in the Europa League and then, continue to get them up for a game that really means nothing in the Premier League. And that's the thing, isn't it? Their sights have to be firmly set on the Europa League and it has to be firmly set on, the strongest team goes out in Europe. And then, whatever happens. And then we work out the weekend after that. But then we also have to realise the following week, we then obviously have a second leg in which we've got to play. So, it's a really difficult moment for fans. I don't really care what happens in the league, being completely honest, because we're not going to get Europe. We're not going to get relegated. I'm really not that asked whether we finish 16th or whether we finish 10th. It really makes no difference to me. Because I don't get any of the money that you get for where you finish. We don't get European football. The most important thing for me is what can we win? And there is a chance that we can win the Europa League. We just have to put everything we have on it.
Totally agree with you. Spot
on. I've got a question for you, actually, Harry, before we go on to our Wolves score predictions. But if Ange Postecoglou goes out of the Europa League at any stage, do you think that Daniel Levy sacks him?
I think that he goes at the end of the season regardless, but I think you wait to the end of the season because, what was the point bringing Ryan Mason at what? Let's say the time we played the second leg, 5-6 league games to go. I don't see the point. Maybe you give him the only benefit in doing that, Luke, is if you find that manager you definitely going to stick with next season. You give them longer than pre-season to work with the players. That's the only benefit. There's no point, as far as I'm concerned, bringing Ryan Mason in for those. Let's say, I think it will be him for those 6 games. Then appointing someone else in the summer, unless Ryan Mason is going to be involved heavily with that team or be the manager, I suppose. You never know. So I just don't see the point of that. For me, at the moment, it's in this moment in time, unless we win the Europa League, I think Ange just go at the end of the season. But there'll be fans that as soon as we want to go out, want him sacked. Depends on the way we go out. If we get humiliated against Frankfurt, then maybe you do. And you just go, look, let's move on. But I'm not going to appoint someone to be here for a few minutes. That's why I don't like us. We do it so often. We bring in these stopgap players, whether it be Werner, Danso, whoever it may be. I think Danso's been a good signing. But it's only like January transfer window, we're just buying temporary stopgaps because look, we're not using either of those players now. Instead of signing quality players, look at Villa, Asensio, for example, that is a game changer. Rashford, who's in their team, we just buy players for the short term. It's got to be the same with the manager. We've got time for me in that summer to get that managerial appointment right. If we're not going to go with Ange, think about that whole decision. Don't make it now. For me, I've changed my tune maybe a little bit after Chelsea. When you think about it, you're really annoyed, aren't you? You lose a London derby, you want everything to drastically change. But if you dissect and think about it, there's no point rushing into the decision. Give yourself a summer and a manager to work with in pre-season, which I think is massive. and hopefully have a say on transfers, if I may dare say so.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Right, what's your score prediction going to be for the Wolves game?
I hate to be too negative, but I think that I don't think I hope we don't lose, but I can't see us winning either at the moment. I'm going with a draw. I'm going to go 1-1.
1-1. Right. What am I going to go for? Do you know what? I'll give Dave's score prediction because he was the only one that gave it before the show started. So that means that his score will count. So he has gone for, bear with me, 3-1 Spurs win, which is unlike Dave, to be honest. I'm going to go one less. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Spurs win. No more, clean sheets for Spurs because we just can't keep them. So I'm going to go 2-1. Dave's gone 3-1, and then we're going to spin the wheel for Winnie next. But what we've got in the comments is 3-1 Tottenham for Jay.
David.
And then David
4-4.
Clark has gone 4-4. That sounds like he's just randomly used the wheel, to be honest, to get his scores. But let's spin the wheel for Winnie. Remember, it is all still to play for in the score predictor table. 4-2 to Wolves is what Winnie's got. All season it's been giving out good scores. Recently, it's not been giving out good scores, right? 4-2 to Wolves. Right. And then we'll spin it now for Callum. 4-1 Spurs. Right, Spurs. And the last spin will be for Wes. The absolute tension. Oh, he's got not a bad scoreline, same as Dave, and that's 3-1 to Spurs. Right, so that's the scores locked in now for this game. We have myself with a 2-1 Spurs win. Winnie with a 4-2 Wolves win, Dave with a 3-1 Spurs win, Callum with a 4-1 Spurs win, and Wes with a 3-1 Spurs win. We will see what happens next weekend as Spurs play Wolves. Remember, there are no score predictions or counting score predictions for the Europa League, but it's always good to have a bit of bragging rights whether you get the score right or not. That kind of hold on. Where's his dad has gone 3-1 to Spurs. So there we go. Remember to keep track of all your scores. David Clark has said, I got Spurs result correct in my predictions in the Premier League. So that's good. I don't think you're going to get it right with a 4-4 next week, but only time will tell. Right, Harry, that kind of wraps us up today. Really do appreciate you coming back on, mate. Good to see you. Good to have you back on the channel. I'm sure the regular viewers and listeners will be glad to hear you back. But tell everybody how they can find you and what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Luke. Really did enjoy it. So thanks so much. It's been fantastic. Hope you'll be back on again soon. At the moment, you've got GCSEs upcoming in less than a month now. So full focus will be on that and hopefully get back to even more content in the summer, but it's still quite a bit going on. I'm a regular Chris Cowlin's Spurs Chat podcast. In fact, I'm coming off here. Before coming on here, I was on his podcast after the game, but now I'm going to be doing match review, player ratings, and a daily Spurs news update for him. And I also saw him today, which was great. But in terms of my own stuff, you can follow me at HarryScarf22 across all socials. I'm a football content creator. And YouTuber. I also have my own YouTube channel, which is Harry Scarf, which includes the Scarfy Spurs Talk weekly podcast. But obviously once was a regular co-host here, and hopefully back on after the summer. So really appreciate you having me and enjoyed our discussion, Luke. It's been great. Thank you.
No problem, mate. Make sure you all go over and follow Harry on all his channels. If you click on the video description, you'll be able to see link to his channel as well. But, if you want to follow us, you can just click the follow button, click the subscribe button on any platform You just have to search Park Lane Podcast or Park Lane Pod, and you will find us. We try to get clips out most days of the week from this week's show, little snippets for you on all social media. So make sure you go and give us a follow. And if you're listening on any podcast platform, leave a comment as well, because we do appreciate those. I just want to thank every single person that's been in the chat today and every person that's watched us over the season as well. There'll be more Spurs content to come. But, let's hope that in the next week we have some positive results so we can talk about them next weekend. And there's a potential that we could still be talking about the European dream. But until then, I hope you all have an amazing week and a massive come on, you Spurs.
Not the Spurs.